Bitter rivals set to do battle in Jacksonville, Florida, in a game best known as the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Georgia Bulldogs and the Florida Gators. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Cole Thompson. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com. Use promo code SECU at sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. Again, guys, that's prizepicks.com. Promo code SECU to get your $50 bonus today. Arch rivals go to battle in Jacksonville, Florida, in one of the SEC's most famous rivalries, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party set to take place yet again. The Georgia Bulldogs and Florida Gators squaring off. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. I am Chris Phillips, and helping me do so, my good friend Cole Thompson joins me once again. Cole, appreciate you taking the time and excited to break down this rivalry matchup with you.
Yeah, as much as I complain about games being at neutral site locations, we have to admit this is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Go ahead and crack open an ice cold one. Enjoy your champagne mimosas. Make sure that you're doing everything proper before you walk on into Everbank Stadium. Follow rules and regulations, which is basically be as humanly drunk as possible because you are at a party, a soiree of sense. And let's hope that the game will live up to expectations on the field the way that the atmosphere off the field always seems to deliver down in Jacksonville.
And Cole, partaking in the cocktail party will be SEC Unfiltered, because this is the Prize Picks SEC Unfiltered Tour game of the week, again brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. We will be headed to Jacksonville, Florida. My first time ever partaking in the cocktail party. Really excited to take in this rivalry firsthand, hang out with some great Dogs, hang out with some great Gators, and again, taking a great weekend of college football at Everbank Stadium. Cole, again, this is a 3:30 p.m. Eastern time kickoff on ABC in Jacksonville. The Georgia Bulldogs are a 16.5-point favorite. The over-under is set at 52. Cole, the series in this one has been really interesting. Georgia leads at all time, 55-44. And 2. You and I were talking about this, though, on air on Monday or a few days ago. This has been really streaky. For those that think, hey, this rivalry has been dominated by Georgia, and certainly those tuned in, they don't need a history lesson, but just in case, Georgia of recent, sure, since Kirby Smart got to Athens, they have dominated the rivalry. But you go back to the 90s, the early 2000s, what Florida did, and since 2000, Florida actually leads this series, I believe, by 8 games. It's been a back-and-forth rivalry. It's been a bit streaky, if you will, but certainly it has not lost that bitterness and that hatred between these two schools. Of course, Cole, the last matchup was last year. Georgia won that game 43-20, a game that was actually competitive through halftime. Dawgs pulled away in that one, but this game always seems to give us something we're not expecting. And Cole, as we dive into this game and this matchup, and something that maybe this time last year we weren't expecting, and certainly a main talking point, probably only one of these two guys, Cole, will play. But this is the Trevor Etienne and Jaden Rashada game. Yeah. And when you think about the dynamics of these two guys, let's start with Rashada. Because, again, he's probably not going to play. Although you could argue, Cole, if you're Kirby Smart, what better, and he won't do this, but what better of a troll job would it be than to, trot out Jaden Rashada on the first series of the game? Or maybe even better if you're a Georgia fan, the final series.
I would say the final.
To knee out the football and close out the football game. I don't think I need to explain the Rashada situation. Nobody here has been living under a rock. You understand why that would be kind of adding salt to the wound if Georgia's able to come out on top. But Trevor Etienne, Cole, going to be a major factor in this game. Florida's had trouble stopping the run, obviously. Georgia wants to get back, I think, to the running game. You saw Etienne in that game against Texas utilized. You've seen him utilized all year long. He's going to be a major factor. But, we're going to get into, Cole, what it means in regard to the matchups. But, just the emotions of this game, it's a really fun storyline for a game that, honestly, Cole, doesn't need many more storylines like this to add to the fuel to the fire that is the hatred between these two teams.
You know what's interesting? You brought up a point where this is a very close rivalry in proximity over the years. And most people wouldn't understand that because of we live in recency bias. It's like the way that I talk about Alabama right now underneath Kalen DeBoer. If you're a certain age group that has gone through the trials and tribulations, you're in your mid to late 40s, you're not hitting the DEFCON 1 panic button just yet. But if you're my age or someone around my age, well, you automatically think that the world is coming to an end because you lost to Vanderbilt. And that's kind of what we talk about with this rivalry, is that there have been so many moments for Florida fans, why can't we get over the hump? But then you go back to the early 2000s and say, well, that was Georgia basically nonstop. I really do believe the ground game is going to be the X factor and benefit of whoever walks away with the more prominent victory. And even if Florida doesn't win this game, if they can establish the rushing attack very early on, especially with Ball coming back in as the new guy, then I feel like that you can make things intriguing going into the final 15 minutes. But you brought up Trevor Etienne. One of the major storylines that came in this offseason was Etienne's comments after transferring to Georgia, saying, why would I want to be a second stringer on a 7-5 roster when I can be a part of a championship team? And honestly, Etienne is the reason why I put so much stock in Georgia versus the field when it came to winning a national title. This, to me, is the most complete running back that has come through Athens since probably DeAndre Swift. This is the type of running back that when you think of highlight players, No Sean Moreno, Herschel Walker, Todd Gurley, Sony Michel, Keith Marshall, he's at that level because of what he provides in terms of his physicality, his looseness in the open field, his consistency. And that Texas game was surely won on the shoulders of Etienne. 87 rushing yards, nearly 5 yards per play, 3 rushing touchdowns. And when you didn't have your counterpunch of Carson Beck because it was a 3-interception performance, you have to sometimes trust what you can always go back to. The things that we know about Georgia, the things that we've known about Georgia in the Kirby Smart era, and really at times in the Mark Richt era. Number one, they will have a solidified, sturdy front seven defense. They will have a stingy, physical, on-brand secondary. And the second thing is that they will have an established run game. It felt like at times this year, neither one of those things have hit. They allowed far too many explosive plays against Mississippi State. They allowed a couple of explosive plays against Auburn in the Deep South's oldest rivalry. But now we look at the game that was really a litmus test for, I think, Georgia to get back to the level of, no, they're still the standard of the SEC for 2024. They're still the face of this conference now that Nick Saban has departed and the Crimson Tide are fully tumbling down the bag. You get back a solid defense. You get back a solid run game. I think that Etienne is going to offer so much value for second and short, to set up a 1st and 10 that gets you 8 yards, to open up the playbook, get Mike Bobo in his elements. That's really what you want to see in this game. And you brought up the Jaden Rashada thing. You got to realize, dude, Kirby's a Georgia boy. Kirby is all Georgia. That means that he knows what this rivalry is about. He's played in this rivalry. He's coached in this rivalry. He knows what the opposing sideline is like when they walk away with the win that they probably shouldn't. Do not say for one quick second that a troll job could not be in the works for somebody who understands what this rivalry is about. If you told me that there was a red zone opportunity just to hit the over, like they already know the game is won, but there's like 2 minutes left, maybe it's like down the 5-yard line, they'll pull Carson back out and say, Rashada, go ahead and show Billy Napier what you're all about. Just to turn the knife and twist it a little bit deeper and go for the kill shot. This is what the rivalries are made for. This is why you bring in a guy like Kirby Smart. And this is why when I say everything is on the table, Chris Phillips, I mean literally everything is on the table down in Jacksonville.
You think about the emotions of this game, Cole, and thinking about Trevor Etienne specifically. I do think, to your point, maybe Rashada comes in late, maybe he doesn't. We'll see. That would be a new wrinkle from Kirby. I don't know that I've ever seen before, although it'd be very fun in this game. And again, just add that fuel to the fire, like I mentioned. But when I think about Trevor Etienne, and I think the emotions this Florida football team specifically is going to be experiencing, because, I mean, let's face it, like when this happened, Florida felt betrayed. There were guys, I believe, kind of chirping on social media. I mean, you understandably so. Like they kind of felt like their guy bailed on them a little bit. I think back, Cole, and let's see if you recall this. One of the most memorable moments from the rivalry, and if you watch Swamp Kings, then you recall this. The moment when Brandon Spikes just obliterated Noshawn Moreno. And he's standing, he's like laying on top of him, like jawing with him, talking shit in his face, like while he's on the ground, and like just and Brandon Spikes was a scary human being.
Yeah.
I don't know if Florida's got a linebacker like that. I doubt they do, because there just aren't many Brandon Spikes walking around anybody's football team. But I imagine that's what Florida players probably have pictured in their head they want to do to Trevor Etienne. Like,
of course they are.
It's going to be nasty. At least early on, there's going to be some car crashes, and I just can't wait to watch the back end, because there's going to be jawing. I mean, and it's not all him. You better make sure you're winning those battles in the trenches. Florida, by the way, is 96 in the country in stopping the run. They've struggled to stop the run. So, like, they got a lot more to worry about than trash talk, but that's like one of the fun elements of a game like this. Like, it's just, yeah.
For me, the big thing is think about a guy like Tommy Tuberville saying that I'm going to be buried in a pine tar box out in Oxford, and then less than 48 hours later, he's the head coach at Auburn. I think everybody at Ole Miss would be content going 9-3, 10-2 if a 77-0 win was against Auburn every single year. I try to bring in baseball references from time to time. When Jacoby Ellsbury left the Boston Red Sox to go to the New York Yankees and took the money and ran because he thought that there was a better opportunity for him to win a World Series out with the Bronx Bombers, Boston fans everywhere didn't care if they won the World Series, but they sure as hell cared if Jacoby Ellsbury was putting on a performance of a lifetime against his former team. They relished in him sucking out in New York City. They loved watching the injuries stockpile, because of all it said was, you left us for the enemy. And this is what it is. It's an enemy. It would be like if an Alabama player, a starting quarterback, then decides to put on an Auburn jersey and march back into Bryant-Denny Stadium for the Iron Bowl and get the win. It would be like a Texas A&M player crossing the territory over to Austin, Texas to take on the Longhorns, now as a part of the Longhorns, and he gets the game-winning pick 6 out DKR. That's what this is. They want to put pain on Trevor Etienne. They want to inflict fear in the eyes of number one. They want to make him realize he made the wrong call, because of when you play this beautiful sport, and more importantly, when you play in this game and you've been on the opposing sidelines, you know what that atmosphere is like. You bled with these brothers. You sweated with these brothers. You died with these brothers. They were your family. They were your family on their sidelines. Everything about it. And now Trevor Etienne said, nope, I don't want to be with family. I want to be chasing a championship. And so they want to go ahead and deliver a promise that he's going to not soon forget. They will be okay. Naturally, they're not going to be okay. Let me phrase that. They're not going to be okay losing this game, even if it's by 3 points. They will at least sleep better on the drive back to Gainesville, Florida, realizing that Trevor Etienne was not the reason that they lost. They will at least be content knowing that the guy who left saying, I want to chase a championship elsewhere, is not the reason that we're going to see an L next to our name.
And Cole, on the other side, when Florida has the football, and you mentioned, again, both sides taking this game personally. Georgia's defense certainly will take this personally. Now, I think Kirby Smart, the big question for me, Cole, what can Florida generate offensively? They've been pretty good, actually, of late. You look at that game again. I know it was against Kentucky, a Kentucky team that's reeling, but still we feel like they've got pretty solid defensive personnel, right? The front seven, especially with guys like Deion Walker and Jamon Dumas-Johnson, speaking of the Dogs. DJ Lagway sort of coming on. The running game for Florida obviously came on their last time out against Kentucky, ran the football for over 300 yards. But the athleticism of DJ Lagway, the offense feels more explosive to me, Cole, than it was with a Graham Mertz in there. But this is a different beast with Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann. You tell me fair or unfair, and I think the direction you're going to go with this, to have concern about a young guy in DJ Lagway facing off against a Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann defense, it's going to be his toughest task. Yeah, maybe the toughest task he faces in his first season as Florida Gators starting quarterback, essentially.
Hey, quick question. You brought up how Florida just beat the brakes off of Kentucky a couple weeks ago, right? You brought that up, right? Do I recall something that happened in week 3 out in Lexington between a Bulldog team? I mean, I'm just saying. Things happen. No, you got to give a lot of credit for DJ Lagway stepping on up and putting on a performance that really was underwhelming at times against Kentucky. And that's a major testament to the way that the defense played. That's a major testament to seeing the way that Jaden Bobb was able to run the football. It's a testament to seeing the way that Jacoby Jackson got involved. This is going to be a very suffocating performance from Georgia's front seven if they want it to be. I think the reason why we undersold Georgia a little bit was we didn't see the breakout performance from a Michael Williams. We didn't see a CJ Allen type of elite performance. We didn't watch a Jalen Walker type of master showcase. And then we get down to Austin, Texas, and everything that we said, we look like idiots and have egg on our face, and certainly now have to have a little bit of crow because of they put on that performance. I mean, everything that you want to see from Georgia hit its full potential. Jalen Walker, 3 sacks, 3 tackles for losses. Malachi Starks, big time pass breakup, also had a tackle for loss. CJ Allen, 4 tackles in the game. Michael Williams, 2 tackles for losses, 2 sacks. And this was against a very solid Texas offensive line. I think a lot of people want to sell their stock on Texas's front 5 when they still have one of the best in college football and certainly one of the best in the SEC. And you don't have that at Florida. Yeah, you have some guys that can win with their first initial rep. And then whenever a counter move is done, they're basically praying that DJ Lagway has already found his target, so he's not going to get penalized for a QB pressure. That's what you have to work with. So Lagway is going to have to grow up in this game. Lagway is going to have to play very clean, concise, consistent football. And if I'm Billy Napier, I'm funneling a game plan that is going to allow us to have timing and direct passes quickly at the line of scrimmage to just milk the clock and hopefully set up more first down opportunities. Because the last thing I can do is hope that Shamir Dike and Elijah Badger, a Trey Wilson, is going to break on one of these young Georgia cornerbacks for a 45-yard gain. But Lagway is already down on the turf by the time that they get open because the offensive line can't block for him. So everything that you do this week at Florida and everything that you've done for the last 2 weeks at Florida is game planning for how to counteract this front seven, this physical pass rush that when it's at its peak is not only lethal, but it will come for you in an instant and you'll feel like that you just got sniped out of thin air. That's how quickly Georgia's defense can suffocate you. But also you brought up how this is a Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart defense. There are things that we know, Christopher, and one of them is that Kirby Smart does not lose often after a bye week. And more importantly, if you give him time to game plan during a bye week, he will bring all the bells and whistles and have this team at peak formation. And by the way, the bye week came right in time for a rivalry matchup. So throw that onto the X factor, throw that onto the pile of misery, and all concocted together to say, this is what you can expect down in Jacksonville, Florida from our defense. They're healthy. They're playing at a brand of football that we are accustomed to seeing. And more importantly, they're going up against a young quarterback playing in this rivalry for the first time who maybe doesn't understand how things get out of control. AKA a Brandon Spikes moment is a common occurrence in this matchup.
Cole, you mentioned the bye week, and at risk of sounding like a broken record, because I mentioned this weeks ago when Georgia and Alabama squared off, because that was off the bye week. And I mentioned this in the Dawgs season opener against Clemson. I believe the record now sits since 2021 when Kirby Smart and Georgia have had more than 7 days to prepare for a game. They are now 12-1 in those games because of the loss to Alabama a couple weeks ago, if you will. They're 12-1 of those games, but I believe 8 of those 12 wins were by 22 or more points. So typically, when Georgia's got extra time to get ready, you are in big trouble. And so Florida, and that, by the way, since 2021, those games include, because every year there's a bye before the Florida game. So few of those results have come against the Gators. So to your point, Cole, I mean, again, I think a lot of it falls on Billy Napier being able to scheme things up, make things simple for Lagway. Do you trust Billy Napier in this situation going against Kirby Smart? I think most would say no, but I think to your point, you're going to have to do things early to get him comfortable. You need to use Lagway's athleticism. You mentioned the run game earlier. You've got to be able to establish some sort of balance because we feel pretty good about Florida's weapons on the outside. And I think some of the matchups there, I think they can win some one-on-one battles. But if you're in these 3rd and longs, these even 2nd and longs, these obvious passing situations, and you're asking a young kid to go back there and, go off against Kirby Smart's defense, you're just in for a world of hurt, I think, and you're in for a really long day. Cole, I think we've got to talk about turnovers in this game. Mm-hmm. I know it goes without saying every football game, turnovers is key. But when you look at Georgia, the rate at which they are turning the football over, Cole, to me, is alarming. And in a game like this, I mean, you even look at the Texas game. you win that football game, but Carson Beck with 3 more interceptions. This is a game, Cole, where going into it, the spread is what it is. The 2 rosters are what they are. The situations within the coaching staffs and the trajectories of the programs, they are what they are. Though Florida's come on obviously strong of late, but it's a game, Cole, in which one side feels very strongly and confidently they're supposed to win. But if you're Georgia and you're turning the football over, and Florida, don't look now, has been really good at getting the football off of people for all the things maybe they haven't done this year, that is something they've been good at. Cole, that's the recipe how you find yourself in a fourth quarter dogfight with your arch rival. Turnovers start to happen, right? One side gets momentum. I mean, if Florida turns the ball over, they have no shot in this game. But if we see Georgia's turnover problems continue to plague them, Cole, I fully expect this to be a one-score game in the fourth quarter. I think it's going to give Billy Napier's squad a team that is still really, really bought in. They all believe in Billy. They're all playing with their hair on fire. I expect more of the same coming out the bye. If we continue to see those Georgia problems or those turnover problems plague Georgia, I think that bodes well for a really, really close cocktail party in the fourth quarter.
You know what's interesting is that Carson Beck has only thrown interceptions in 3 games this year. Alabama, Mississippi State, Texas. Here's the problem. He has 8 interceptions, which means every single game is a multi-interception performance. So when there's one, there is a usual secondary suspect on the horizon. It may come in the fourth quarter. It may come on the ensuing drive. But at this point, you have to expect that there is going to be another one that piles on top of the first one. So for Florida, can you capitalize also off of the turnovers? Look at Texas in that game. They had 3 interceptions. They had they had 1 scoring drive off of it. So when you get the turnovers, you have to create something out of it because it does nothing if you get an interception and then it's a quick 3 and out and the ball's right back in Georgia's hands. And it's basically a mulligan. So you have to create the opportunities to where when you get a Carson Beck interception or a Trevor Etienne fumble or a Dominic Love fumble in the open field or whoever it may be, and I'm not saying that these guys are fumble prone or turnover prone. I'm saying that it could happen to anybody. You have to be able to get that counterpunch and at least walk away with 3 points because if it does no good making a negative play, just remain idle. You have to create a positive play in your return because if you can do that, then at least you're keeping things interesting. Now you're also saying, hey, this is what's working. This is what isn't working. You're allowing Mike Bobo and Kirby Smart to have the game plan. Here's what we need to work on. Here's what we need to take away from. Here's what they're doing a really good job at signaling at. Here's what they're doing a really good job at honing in on. Make sure that we counteract with this type of punch versus this type of punch. But if all you're doing is you're throwing an interception and you're watching that, you're watching as a DJ Lagway or Jaden Baugh or Montreal Johnson, if he's healthy for this game, goes 3 yards, 2 yards, -3 yards, and now it's a punt, then it is a wash of a play. Hey, Carson, don't throw into double coverage next time. Just do a dink and dunk if you have to. Let's set up Trevor Etienne to run the football. Let's set up Nate Frazier to get a couple of extra yards after contact. Let's worry about that instead of you trying to get the highlight play. But again, this is also a really big game, I think, for Carson Beck because if he doesn't have a turnover, he's been pretty sufficient this year. In fact, even in games where he has had turnovers, I mean, over 400 passing yards against Mississippi State, over 400 passing yards against Alabama. Like, even with those games where he will have turnovers, he can light up the stat sheet and he finds his way into the end zone more often than not. So I think that this is going to be one of those performances where if you are Florida, you want to create the turnovers. You want to create the opportunities to give your offense a spark. But at the same time, if you are Georgia, a turnover is not a death sentence in this game. What you have to do is be able to regroup and respond. And more importantly, if your defense bails you out of trouble, then make sure that you recoup the benefit for them. And you say, hey, we got you. You helped us from saving 6 points against me. Now it's my turn to give you 6 extra points to work with.
Cole, from the Georgia perspective, we saw them get out to a fast start against Texas, a big lead, obviously, at halftime in Austin. That was not what we had seen, throughout this entire year. That was something new with Georgia. I'm curious, are they able to carry that momentum, get off to a fast start? Do we see them kind of sluggish out of the gate again like we had seen in previous games? And also, Cole, I mentioned how does Billy Napier and company kind of, I don't think they're going to be safe, but, how do they handle DJ Lagway, put him in position to be successful? Georgia, Ole Miss, LSU, Texas, Florida State. Yeah. That's the 5-game stretch that Florida's got upcoming. And this is the most important stretch of Billy Napier's tenure in Gainesville. I don't know if he can even save his job at this point. I really don't. But Cole, probably what would have to happen for him to do so, to be back in 2025, it doesn't have to be this game, but it would help if it was. They're probably going to have to score some big upset. And so I'm really curious, do we see Billy Napier kind of say, screw it, we're going to empty the bag? I've got nothing to lose here. Like I got to go down swinging. I got to go down with, throw the kitchen sink at them, everything we got. I'm really curious to see, because again, there's nothing more dangerous than somebody backed into a corner fighting for their life tooth and nail. That has nothing, the fighter that feels like he's got nothing to lose and is willing to die in the ring. A lot of times, Cole, that's the guy that wins the fight, or at minimum takes the fight down to the wire, maybe unexpectedly. So
yeah, but at the same time, here's the other point. When you're a team like Georgia that has its back against the wall and realizes I still got games against Ole Miss, I still have games against Tennessee, I cannot afford to lose a matchup. You see who they truly are. Look at that Texas game. Because if you brought up that Texas, you didn't expect that to be the outcome at halftime, 23-0. No, I don't think anybody in the building did. I don't think anybody that works in media thought that was going to be the case. But nobody was shocked that that was what Georgia was able to do, because it's Georgia. It's a program. It's a standard. It is what we expect from a Kirby Smart-led team. The other part that's going to be really interesting for me in this matchup comes down to, can Florida kind of take a good lead going into halftime? Because the final score read 30-15 for Texas. Texas came out swinging in the second half and at least made things interesting. You get the big touchdown drive from Quinn Ewers, you get the turnover, you score an extra, you get the Jaden Blue touchdown. And so now we're at 15 points. That's because Texas has the weaponry and the personnel to be able to come back and withstand a 23-0 deficit. Does Florida have that? And I think that plays into the point of emptying out the kitchen sink. Because if you're in this game and it's a 7-point margin, yeah, I think you're going to see Billy kind of open some things up and be willing to take a little bit more of aggressive shots downfield. And the reason for that is because if he wants this win. But if you're down 27-0 and you know there is no point of coming back, are you really going to give a team like LSU a slight advantage to potentially see what you could be running? A team like Texas a slight advantage to what you could run against them if you get a lead? A team like Ole Miss, what you could potentially throw out if you're down to the wire and this becomes a must-win moment for both sides to save their season? No. So I don't want to discredit anything from Florida. I think Florida still is playing its version of football that is showing that we believe that Billy Napier is the right guy. We internally as a roster believe in our head coach, and we think he is the best thing down in Gainesville. But when your backs are against the wall, you also have to realize you can be Steve Rogers as Captain America, or you can be Steve Rogers as the little scrawny kid from Brooklyn saying, I can do this all day, knowing that you're going to lose. I think that when you look at Georgia, that is Steve Rogers saying, I can do this all day. That's Captain America. When you look at Florida, until I see it, knowing how many questions I have on the offensive line, knowing how many questions I have with a young quarterback like DJ Lagway, this is just the version of the kid that doesn't have the super serum saying, I can do this all day outside of a movie theater, needing Bucky Barnes to have to come on in and kick somebody else's ass.
And to your point, Cole, too, when you empty the clip and when you play with nothing to lose, sometimes it works. Sometimes a team like Georgia makes you pay. So that being said, Cole, let's lock in predictions for this game. World's largest outdoor cocktail party down in Jacksonville. A bitter rivalry between Georgia and Florida. I'll let you start. Who comes out on top?
This is going to be a close game, I think, through the first half. I really do believe it. I think that you will see a little bit of that spark that we watched against Kentucky for Florida, especially in the ground game. I mean, when you look at the way that Jaden Baugh played, he averaged 4.8 yards per play, 5 rushing touchdowns. I think you're going to see a couple of deep strikes down the field. I mean, Elijah Badger had like 146 receiving yards on 5 catches. So he was the big explosive playmaker. I think that Shamir Digay is going to get a couple of big-time catches. I think that you're going to find separation between the safeties of Malachi Starks and KJ Bolden to create ways for you to capitalize and get points. And I do think that you will see a Carson Beck turnover in the first half. But I brought this up whenever it came down to Texas. Nobody is going to be shocked if Georgia wins this game by 20-plus points, because it's Georgia. It is still the standard of the SEC. It is still the bread and butter. It is still the number one arsenal. It is still everything that we expect when we watch a Kirby Smart led roster. You gave them 2 weeks to game plan. You gave them time to figure out all the ins and outs of what makes DJ Lagway click and what makes DJ Lagway choke. You figured all those things out. And Glenn Schumann, again, is a mastermind of helping getting his second level of the defense, most of the linebackers and safeties prepared for this matchup. And if you can find a way to spy Lagway, to take away his athleticism, this could be, going into the third quarter, a closer game before you watch the suffocation and the eyeballs pop out and just go, oh, crap, okay, now we're in a lot of trouble. And you're trying to hit the reset button, and it's like DEFCON 1. How do we make sure that we pull the parachute? We can't do it. And that's what I think is going to happen in this matchup. I think Florida, they've had their shots to be able to deliver. I really feel like that Tennessee game was one that you should have just gone all out for. Instead, you played it safe. You can't play it safe in this matchup. You won't be able to play it safe in this matchup. I think Georgia rolls. I think Georgia wins really big in the second half. You are going to see Trevor Etienne get the last laugh, and maybe you will see Jaden Rashada come out for that kneel down. But I'm going to go 41-24 final. 41-20 final score. I just feel like that, again, in a rivalry matchup, knowing what this game is all about, you're going to watch as Georgia capitalizes and they make another statement before they have to play against two other quality teams who are trying to make the college football playoff, and they realize, no, you see what we did to Texas? This is a common occurrence. Bring your A game, and you're still going to go ahead and take a loss.
Cole, did you see the comment this week from Steve Spurrier talking about this game, that he said that he feels like he believes Florida is just as talented as Georgia is?
I believe
he said that. He went on record. Yeah.
I believe it's 9:00 somewhere. Sure. Yeah. Okay. I don't know where, but it's somewhere.
Yeah, I respected the HBC for, listen, if he really believes that, then so be it, but whatever. I just thought that was interesting. I didn't know if you'd seen that. Anyways, this game, first off, really excited to take this thing in person. Again, I've never experienced the cocktail party outside of just watching on TV. It's one of the SEC rivalries that I grew up watching. I've been asked a lot, Cole, especially this previous weekend, by Texas fans. I've been asked by Oklahoma fans. I've been asked by others as well. Hey, how significant is this rivalry in the SEC? It's one of those for me growing up. Again, you had the Iron Bowl. You had the Deep South's oldest rivalry. You had Third Saturday in October. You had the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It was just one of those games you looked forward to on a yearly basis. That being said, Cole, when it comes to this matchup, I love your take on the fact that I think Florida is going to come out swinging. I really do. I think the emotions of this game early on, this intense rivalry matchup, again, people look at where the two programs are. They say, oh, it's not competitive. It's not a good game. There's still a lot of bitterness and a lot of hatred in this rivalry. Tons. You don't believe me? Watch a few minutes or watch a quarter or so on Saturday afternoon. So I think early on, I think there's going to be not literal punches thrown, but punches thrown in the football sense.
Maybe one or two.
Yeah, there's going to be
maybe one or two.
You never know. Maybe one or two. There's going to be a lot of jawing, a lot of trash talk. I think there's going to be a lot of emotions early. Cole, I'll go as far as to say this. I think Florida's up at halftime. I do. I could see a 14-10, 17-14 type of score. What I'm intrigued to see, Cole, we saw Georgia kind of finally beat Georgia against Texas and wake up, and we're like, oh, there they are. They've been underwhelming, though, in games, even the Alabama game, although second half they looked fantastic. But, and I don't want to call Florida lesser competition, but in games where it's like we're waiting, okay, is this the game that Georgia rolls and here comes the big blowout? They've been fine. They haven't been great. So I just wonder, is this game in a rivalry game with, to your point, extra time to get ready? Is this where it clicks and Georgia rolls and it's like, hey, there's the national title contender we've been waiting on? Or do they kind of trudge their way through this one like they've done in games past and still find a way to win, but it's not flashy, it's not sexy, and what have you? So I think in a rivalry game, I see Florida being up at half. I do think Georgia is going to pull away in this game. I think turnovers will be yet an issue yet again. For Florida, if they've done anything well, it's getting the football off of people. Georgia struggled with that. I think Georgia, though, Cole, does pull away in the second half again. I think Florida leads at halftime. Kirby Smart and company, they do what they do best, make halftime adjustments. They essentially dominate the second half, and I think that's enough for Georgia to score yet again another cocktail party victory. I think the Gators cover, but Florida gets the W. Give me Georgia 31, Florida 17. Again, in a game that, Cole, I think first half, the story will be a lot of emotions. Billy Napier and company sort of emptying the clip, throwing everything they got at the Dogs. Again, I think taking a lead in a halftime, but the better personnel is going to prevail in this one. Kirby Smart and company will make those adjustments. And again, they'll get the 14-point win in this ball game. And again, stay on their path towards an SEC championship and chasing a national championship as well. And again, I think it'll be a valiant effort by Florida. Just don't think it'll be enough in the end.
Chris, let me ask you, do you like, because this feels just right on brand for this rivalry where it's 17-10 at halftime, Florida's leading, and then we go back and we look at the stat sheet and it's 31-3 in the second half where Georgia just steamrolled. Like it just feels like that is the recipe that we are accustomed to seeing, and that is probably the most likely outlook scenario. Second half adjustments by Kirby Smart, one of the best in the industry, and unfortunately, and I hate to make this pun, but Georgia's got the Dogs to do it.
They do indeed. Guys, again, world's largest outdoor cocktail party taking place in Jacksonville. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Who do you see coming out on top when Georgia and Florida do battle on Saturday? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. For Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.